The NBA is officially back, with the preseason for the 2021 season starting today, so it seems appropriate to leap into predictions for the actual season that starts in a little over a week. In today's video, I will be telling you my prediction for the Western Conference standings in 2021, starting from the 15th seed and working my way up to number 1. Before we start, if you're new here and enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe for more NBA content like this. I'm trying to hit 15,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so all support would be greatly appreciated. Anyway, with that all being said, let's get right into these predictions, starting at number 15. Number 15, the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder were the biggest surprise team of the 2020 season, finishing as the 5th seed and taking the heavily favoured Houston Rockets to 7 games in the first round, even though many predicted they'd miss the playoffs altogether. They were led by Chris Paul, who proved he's still an elite contributor for a winning franchise, and they were overall one of the most enjoyable teams to watch and likeable squads in the whole league. However, with the departure of many key players such as Chris Paul himself, 6th Man of the Year finalist Dennis Schroeder, and glue guy Steven Adams, it's hard to see OKC continuing the success of 2020 into next season to any degree. Over the offseason, the Thunder's talent has been seriously depleted. It's hard to name more than 5 guys on this team off of the top of my head. That's how serious of a drop-off this team has had in talent on paper. That's why I have to put them as the 15th seed. There's still a lot to look forward to for OKC fans. Expect major improvements from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander next season as he's given more control over the offense. But again, with the poor roster he has around him, don't expect his major personal improvements to contribute to a lot of wins. In the shortened 72-game season, I can see OKC winning 15 to 20 games next season. Number 14, the Sacramento Kings. The Kings were pretty disappointing in 2020. After coming close to a playoff berth in 2019, the team had aspirations to make it this past season, but as we all know, that didn't really come close to happening. And unfortunately, after a dismal offseason from the franchise, it's hard to see them bouncing back up next season too, especially considering how stacked the middle part of the Western Conference is now. The Kings lost a fair few key players as well this offseason, the most notable being Bogdan Bogdanovic. They originally got a solid deal back for him when they sent him to Milwaukee, but that deal fell through, so then they let him walk to Atlanta, even though Atlanta even offered a pick or 2 back in return. That, by the way, has to be one of the dumbest moves I've ever heard a franchise do. Sacramento were literally being offered back something in return for Bogdanovic, and they declined it just to lose him to that team for nothing. It makes no sense. This offseason has just been really disappointing for the Kings, and it's going to hold them back a lot next season. They made some nice selections in the draft, I will give them credit there, but they haven't made any major moves this offseason that make them jump anywhere near the playoff picture to me, and to be honest, they just got worse overall. I'm confident in their young guns like De'Aaron Fox and Tyrese Halliburton, but the Kings are still far too young and inexperienced for me to say they're going any further next season than they did this year. A bunch of teams around Sacramento got better, and they arguably got worse, so I have to put them down here at number 14. I have Sacramento winning about 20 to 25 games next season. Number 13, the San Antonio Spurs. After over 2 decades of continuous playoff appearances, the San Antonio Spurs finally fell out of the playoff picture in 2020, and I expect that to continue into next season. The Spurs didn't make any major upgrades over the offseason, and unless LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan turn back the clock and become a superstar duo together, I can't see this team doing much damage next season. I am excited to see the development of players like Lonnie Walker, and I think the Spurs overall have a very good core that will allow them to compete well next season. But with that being said, it would just be wrong to put this very average team over some of the clubs I'm about to list. So for that reason, I have them here at number 13. I have the Spurs winning about 25 to 30 games next season. Number 12. The Minnesota Timberwolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves have been on the cusp of a playoff berth for many seasons now, but always find a way to fall short. It's fair to say their stars' inability to contribute to wins has become frustrating for the franchise, but there have been glimpses of hope. Up until Karl Anthony Towns' injury in December last year, the Minnesota Timberwolves were hovering around 500, so had he stayed healthy, who knows how far they could have gone. With that said though, I'm not a firm believer in this team, and with the middle of the pack in the West being as tight as it is right now, I can definitely see the Timberwolves failing to make the playoffs yet again. Defense is a big worry for this team, and I can see that hindering them next season too. In my eyes, we're going to see another monstrous season from Cat if they want to be a real threat for a lower playoff seed, and we need to see some consistency from D'Angelo Russell too. Again, I'm not completely sold on this team. It's why I have them so low, but the potential is there for them to be great. The problem is, that potential has been with this team for so many years now, and again, they failed to make the most of it. I am being a bit pessimistic on them here, but I have to say that there are many better sides out there on paper than Minnesota to me, and I can't really put a lot of faith into them just yet. I really hope that they prove me wrong, but I'm not all too confident in the Timberwolves for next season. I have them winning about 25 to 30 games in 2021. Number 11. The Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies had a fantastic 2020 season, and a surprising one at that too. The days of grit and grind officially ended, and in came a new young core revolving around the number 2 pick, Ja Morant. Not only was Morant and co absolutely amazing together, but they won games too, holding the 8th seed for a long time before being knocked out by Portland. Memphis certainly turned a few heads last season, and they're a team on the rise. But with that said, I don't see a major improvement from them this upcoming season. I still believe this team will be a playoff contender and will probably move in and out of the playoff picture throughout this season, especially with the potential breakout of Jaren Jackson Jr. and further development of Ja Morant. But when it's all said and done, I think they'll probably fall behind the more experienced teams and sit in 11th. This team is definitely one to keep an eye on for sure, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did end up stealing the 8th seed somehow at the end of the season, but I think it's more realistic to have them sitting where they are. I have the Grizzlies winning around 30 to 35 games next season. Number 10. The New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans to me are in a similar situation to the Memphis Grizzlies. They are a young team on the rise and a major playoff contender, but I believe they'll probably fall short next season. Like Memphis, they'll see their turn in the playoff picture, but in the end will likely fall out behind more experienced, arguably better sides, which I'll get into in a sec. With that said though, even though it will be tough for New Orleans to make the 8 with the teams ahead of them, I think they still can. The Pelicans had a great offseason, getting a good amount of picks and solid players in return for Drew Holiday, who didn't really fit the timeline of the team, and they've also garnered Steven Adams, who is a very underrated pickup. If reports and claims by teammates are true, Zion Williamson seems to be in great health, meaning he could burst out into that once-in-a-generation player he's hyped up to be. If the additions to the roster work as predicted, and if guys like Lonzo Ball, Zion and Brandon Ingram all improve as expected, we may see the Pelicans in the 8, even as such a young team. It's unlikely, which is why I've got them at 10, but I wouldn't count them out. I believe the Pelicans will win 35 to 40 games next season. Number 9. The Utah Jazz. Now before I talk about Utah properly, I will say it was difficult to leave them out of the 8 because I truly feel as if this is a playoff side. Donovan Mitchell showed us how great he can become in the playoffs last season. And if things are all good in the locker room as they seem to be now, they should finish as an 8th or 7th seed in my eyes realistically. However, it was still hard to put them above the next couple teams, so I guess you could say they're an 8B or an 8.1 rather than a 9 seed. With the play-in tournament staying, there's still a good chance at making it, so that benefits this placement I guess, but again, though I want to lock them in with a higher seed, it was hard to with the teams around them. Anyway, the Jazz were nearly a second round team last season after jumping out to a 3-1 advantage over Denver. Though I wouldn't say that they choked the 3-1 lead at all, they still blew it and it was a disappointing end to an amazing year for the Jazz and series individually for guys like Donovan Mitchell. Utah didn't make any crazy moves this offseason, so they're still nowhere near a title contender in my books, but the core they have is good enough in my eyes to keep them in the playoff conversation. As I've mentioned, the middle ground of the West is stacked and extremely even, so it's why I have to put them down at 9, but again, they're still a playoff team in my books. I'm a big fan of their squad and Donovan Mitchell. I'd say Utah will win around 40 to 45 games next season. Number 8. The Portland Trailblazers. The Portland Trailblazers had an amazing offseason and they're a big underdog for next season. Though I believe they'll remain stagnant in the standings and get the 8th seed again, they've made massive improvements to their roster and are now a better team than last season by quite a lot. Getting Covington is a big W for them. He makes them a lot better defensively, which was a big issue for the team last season. With Nurkic healthy now as well, and Lillard and McCollum likely to continue their all-star type form, expect a big season out of this team. The bubble showed how much potential they have, and with an entire season with a fully healthy squad, I doubt that they'll fail to make the most of it. I predict that the Blazers will win 40 to 45 games next season. Number 7. The Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns were involved in one of the off-season's biggest trades as they received Chris Paul from the Oklahoma City Thunder. This move alone, in my eyes, propels the Suns into the playoff picture. Chris Paul will be able to maximize the potential of the young Suns core, similar to what he did with OKC, except this time around, he's playing with one of the league's best scorers in Devin Booker. So it's just crazy to imagine just how good this team could be. I've got them at 7 though, because they may start off slow, as Chris Paul has said in interviews that he's never played with any of these guys on Phoenix, so it may take some getting used to. Anything less than a playoff appearance though would be an utter disappointment for this team, and I really can't see them missing out, to be honest. If Chris Paul's impact on and off the court is still as high as it was in OKC, if Booker can prove how elite he truly is, and if Ayton takes a leap this year too, this team will be a quiet threat next year. They're going to be a fun team to watch. I have the Suns winning around 45 games next season. Number 6. Houston Rockets. This placement of the Houston Rockets is subject to change because who knows what's happening with James Harden. It's pretty clear that he wants out, but as of right now, it's not clear if he'll actually be traded. So as a Rockets fan, I've looked at things more optimistically and assumed we'll keep him around for the majority of the season. If we do trade him, I'll say the Rockets are more like a 9 seed. This team is still very solid outside of Harden, but obviously nowhere near the same level with him. Assuming Harden is still on the team for the majority of the season, I'm still expecting a drop-off from last year, mainly because of the Westbrook Wall trade. It still doesn't make a lot of sense to me why we did it. and unless Wall is 100% healthy and will play better than anything he did in Washington, I can't see this team going further than the first round. If Wall is anything less than he was prior to injury, it'll probably be a regrettable trade for us in terms of trying to win a chip, because we'll likely regress with him as our replacement for Russell Westbrook. As a Houston fan, I'm still excited for this season. The core group of Cousins, Wood, Wall, etc. still seems fun even without Harden, but I will admit this is probably the worst position the franchise has been in for quite some time. Expect a solid season from Houston, but nothing outside of a decent playoff appearance. Remember, this is subject to change, but expect them to finish anywhere between the 6 and 10 seeds next season. At best, I have them winning around 45 games next season. Number 5. The Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors looked poised for a big bounce-back season in 2021 with the return of a healthy Curry and Klay Thompson. However, those plans got thrown out the window pretty quickly, with Klay's Achilles rupture just weeks before training camp started, which is absolutely devastating for the team. Though Golden State won't be as serious of a contender as they were previously thought to be, they'll still be a really good team. A core of Curry, Oubre, Wiggins, Draymond, and Wiseman, with guys like Chris, Looney, Poole, and Pascal coming off the bench, is one heck of a side, and that should at bare minimum get them a solid playoff seed. With Klay Thompson, they're probably a top 2 team in the West, but even without him, they're still up there, which is why I have them at 5. Golden State will no longer be as deadly as they had potential to be in 2021, but they'll certainly be good enough to remain a serious threat if Curry can show he's still in form, and if the surrounding cast live up to the pressure. This team can go places. The 5th seed is definitely a fair judgment to me without knowing how good this team really is. There's little playing experience between the group with each other, so I think that's a good estimate. I have Golden State winning around 45 to 50 games next season. Number 4. The Dallas Mavericks. The Mavericks and their stars have some high expectations coming into this season. Doncic has been tipped by many to win the MVP, and after a fantastic playoff appearance last season where they could have upset the Clippers without the injuries, fans believe this squad is a real underdog threat to win the championship. I too agree with that, and I think Dallas is a great chance at reaching a top 2 seed in the stacked West, but realistically, they'll probably fall between 3 and 6, which is why I've got them at 4. Dallas added some fantastic pieces to their core over the course of the offseason, starting to build around Doncic an elite cast of talent. The addition of Josh Richardson fills a gap they had last season, and if Porzingis can remain healthy throughout 2021, there shouldn't be much reason as to why this team can't yet again climb the standings. The Mavericks are shaping up to be a very exciting squad for next season, and if the playoffs showed us anything, this team is ready to take the next step. Without injuries to stars around them like Klay Thompson, the Mavericks may have been lower, but I do feel like putting them at 4 is still a very realistic expectation for them. I have the Mavericks winning 45 to 50 games next season. Number 3. The Denver Nuggets. The Denver Nuggets were yet again an underrated team in 2020, as they were in 2019, but finally were able to put on show to everyone how great of a team they truly are, making the Western Conference Finals and fighting back from 2 3-1 deficits in the same postseason. It was unbelievable. Though Denver's depth may have been slightly weakened over the offseason, there's no doubt they'll be back up in the fight yet again in 2021. They have plenty of experience now. Jamal Murray is on the cusp of breaking out, into a legitimate scoring superstar, so it's a very exciting season ahead of the Nuggets. Their young players will be developing too, like Michael Porter Jr., Bol and RJ Hampton, so again, they have a lot to look forward to. Having them as the 3 seed is very fair, and there's high potential that they could even get the number 2 seed maybe instead. I'm a big fan of what Denver are doing, and I believe they'll be a real threat for the championship yet again in 2021. I have Denver winning around 50 games next season. Number 2, the LA Clippers. A fair amount of people have been sleeping on the Clippers coming into this season due to their embarrassing exit last season. But I don't think fans should forget how good this team is and will continue to be in 2021. The Clippers made some big improvements to their roster over the offseason, which addressed some major weaknesses that they had. One was getting Ibaka, who fixes the interior and big man defense problem they were exposed to have against Denver, as well as providing an outside scoring threat from the 4 or 5 positions. They also got Kennard, who fixes the shot creation and playmaking problem they had outside of Kawhi, so he will make the Clippers more deadly as well. This was honestly as good of an offseason that the Clippers could have possibly had, and it's why I'm so confident in them for next season to put them as the 2nd seed. With Paul George extending his contract and Kawhi Leonard continuing his all-time great play, I truly believe the Clippers will be even better in 2021 than they were last season. I have them winning 50 to 55 games next season in the shortened season. Number 1, the Los Angeles Lakers. Finally, we have the Lakers as my number 1 seed in the Western Conference for next season, and you really should have seen this coming. The Lakers roster improved significantly this past offseason with the addition of amazing players like Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell, who were both top 2 finalists for the 6th Man of the Year last season. So it's crazy how the Lakers have been able to add them to the squad. As they say, the rich get richer, and that's what's happened to the Lakers over the past couple months. They are fresh off an NBA championship and were already favorites coming into this season. The fact that they've gotten even better is just crazy to me, and it's why I see them locking up the number 1 seed in 2021. The only way I see them not getting the 1st seed is if guys like Lebron take some time off to begin the year because of such a short turnaround. But once they get into it, the Lakers will be almost impossible to stop. I have the Lakers winning 55 to 60 games next season. And that will conclude my standings predictions for the Western Conference. In summary, I have the Lakers as the 1st seed, followed by the Clippers, Nuggets, and Mavericks taking home court advantage. The Warriors, Rockets, Suns, and Blazers make up the rest of the playoff picture, closely followed by the Jazz, Pelicans, and Grizzlies just outside of it. The bottom of the West is made up of Minnesota, San Antonio, Sacramento, and finally OKC. Be sure to let me know your thoughts on these predictions down in the comments below, and be sure to drop your own Western Conference standings predictions too. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop it a like and subscribe, but with that being said, I am out. Peace.
Hey, Mobs, that sounds wavy.